This video is sponsored by Raycon. Well, summer has quickly arrived once again, and what better way to celebrate the sand and sun than to look at another obligatory shark movie. Last year we played it light and loose with genetically modified Frankenstein sharks in Deep Blue Sea, but this year I'm feeling cute. I think we should go for the polar opposite vibe and explore the cold, slow, uncomfortable endurance test that is Open Water, the bleakest shark movie ever made. As we go along, please consider liking the video and leaving a comment below telling me what film I should cover next, and if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. Inspired by the true story of Tom and Eileen Lonergan, Open Water follows the distressing events of a couple called Daniel and Susan, who after taking a last-minute holiday to escape their work-intensive lives, find themselves stranded in the ocean when their scuba diving party accidentally leaves them behind. What follows is a disorientating and agonizingly long hour of perpetual misery and hopelessness, as we intimately experience the physical and psychological suffering the couple go through as they desperately wait out for rescue, all while contending with a current dragging them further into the unknown and the arrival of hungry sharks circling them like sea vultures. That's it. That's the movie. There really isn't a story to be told here. It's pretty much a visceral mood piece designed to intensify every phobia you have about the ocean and convey its utter brutality. You are at its mercy and there is simply nothing you can do about it. Now, I will address the real-life story the film is based on, as well as the events that transpire a little later in the video. However, I want to start by exploring the production behind the film. Simply put, this is a movie you'll either love for its matter-of-fact delivery, or hate because you're literally staring at open water the entire movie. In fact, apparently Fangoria nominated it for Best Wide Release Film and Worst Film, which says everything you need to know. The best way to gauge if it's for you is to go with the poster review that describes it perfectly as the Blair Witch Project meets Jaws. It's barely 80 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome thankfully, but if you didn't like Blair Witch because of its nothingness, depending on your personal feelings towards the situation presented, you're likely going to feel the same way. I guess you could say it's the kind of movie you'll respect for what it's trying to accomplish, but it still doesn't make for the best viewing experience. Shot on digital video for a budget of around $120,000, like Blair Witch, Open Water obtained a massive return at the box office, grossing over $55 million. While not a found footage film, it certainly feels documented as one to add an air of guerrilla-style authenticity, as if we're watching a friend's shitty vacation video. At times, it even feels like a made-for-TV reenactment, along with the hammy acting and vapid dialogue. Hell, there's one scene that feels like the most awkward homemade porno you'll ever watch. Well, that's of course if you watch a lot of homemade... Anyway, once we finally get into the water, the film actually starts to show its raw, distinct visual flair with how it literally drowns you in its harrowing conditions, with the sharks only getting brief, spontaneous flashes of appearance to mimic the struggle for buoyancy the characters are continuously going through. Now, I'll admit it's a little disingenuous to simply call it a shark movie. They're presented more as a presence rather than an active danger. The major distress comes from the overall conditions, more so than one particular threat. Not only does the film use real sharks, but it's produced with the intention of depicting sharks in the most realistic way possible. They don't just automatically start attacking or have a natural hostility, they behave curious towards the couple, observing them for several hours on end to check if they're edible. The movie actually makes jellyfish a more casual menace, while the open wound on Susan's leg is nibbled at by tiny bastard fish. Okay, so at this point, I want to address the true story that served as the basis for Open Water. Then I'll go into some of the more interesting specifics that really heighten the stress and believability of the film. So moving forward, keep in mind that everything you see is at your own discretion, so there could be spoilers in here. However, just before we go any further, here are a few words from this video sponsor, Raycon. When it comes to horror, there's no better feeling than setting the perfect conditions to scare yourself silly. For me, it's cradling on the sofa with some warm, moody lighting, a glass of wine, rum or tequila, and watching my favorite horror content while wearing my Raycon earbuds. Yeah, I'm just that classy. With Raycon's feature to switch on noise isolation and flip between 3 distinct sound profiles, I can cater my experience to the type of horror I'm watching or listening to. For example, if I'm watching something with that classical 70s or 80s feel, switching to bass mode really heightens that stylish beat and synthesizer, while for more relaxed true crime content, I switch to pure sound to give the narrator that crisp, alluring quality to send a chill down my spine. Raycon earbuds are all about giving you the accessibility to listen and feel the way you want, with a comfort and reassurance that you're getting the best experience out there. Whether you're snuggled up like me, or sweating it out at the gym with these immovable earbuds, or just constantly on the go. Also, if you're anything like me, you'll typically forget to use your charger on a regular basis. However, Raycon's managed to pack an impressive 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life into a protective charging case, allowing you to keep that fantastic sound quality going more regularly. With over 50,000 5-star reviews and starting at half the price of other premium audio brands, click the link in the description box below or go to buyraycon.com/Ryan to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. And if you do so, please let me know what you think. So, I won't go into the theories about what precisely happened to Tom and Eileen Lonergan, but the story simply goes that during a scuba diving tour off the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland, Australia in January 1998, Tom and Eileen were accidentally left behind by the diving company Outer Edge Dive, whose operator Jack Nerin didn't realise until discovering their belongings aboard his boat 2 days later. Despite a 3-day search operation, Tom and Eileen's bodies were never recovered, except for the remnants of their diving gear and a distress message discovered over the following months. While Nerin was prosecuted for manslaughter, he was found not guilty. However, his company absorbed the blame via a fine of negligence, causing them to go out of business, with Queensland's government enforcing greater safety and logistic regulations. I've left a link below to the source I used for discussing that true story by Kira Goldfarb of All Things Interesting if you really want to know some of the more detailed specifics, but the core idea that the film aims to convey is just how random and incidental things like this can be. It is a situation that can happen to anyone. Open water has a very casual way of drifting us into the conflict. It all comes down to a simple human error, when the instructor makes an accidental miscount when the divers are back aboard. It's sort of implied that the miscount is indirectly caused by a random diver who forgets his mask and has to stay aboard, but when another couple return early because the girl struggles with her equipment, he borrows her mask and goes below with the girl's partner. As such, there's a double count made when they return that should have been for Susan and Daniel. Now, I know what you're going to say, that's their system for ensuring everyone has returned. Honestly, it does not surprise me in the slightest. It is well documented that there are plenty of independent operators with dodgy, dubious protocols in place for all sorts of activities. That's if they even have one in place to begin with. There is this feeling of complacency that's established before the dive even begins, where the instructor explains the itinerary and the methodology, but the camera's attention wanders about other distractions that you don't take in anything he really says. You could argue that the distraction puts you in the wandering headspace of the characters, causing them to return late, but overall, it conveys that feeling of, meh, what's the worst that can happen? We'll be safe, they've done this countless times before, we're paying them to look after us, it'll be fine. It plays into natural human behavior. There are plenty of mundane moments that many of us can relate to, like when the couple arrive at their destination and instead of this idyllic, romantic getaway, they act incredibly stiff and bored about the entire thing. It's very much a, well, we're here now, what the fuck do we do? How does one relax? You can tell there's something very forced about their holiday. They clearly don't want to be there, and the reality is, they don't. Later in the film, they argue about doing the trip more out of an obligation to relax rather than because they want to. It's already a bad holiday. That's what makes their chemistry kinda unique in the beginning. You can tell they love each other, but they're uncomfortable in their surroundings. In fact, Susan wanted a skiing holiday. That sounds more like their thing. Anyway, I believe I read somewhere once that the film essentially feels like you're watching two people slowly die. If you're scared of water or getting lost, your fear should be at peak levels because the complete nothingness is what makes it so effective. Their wetsuits make them blend in with the water that they're practically invisible, drifting uncontrollably in a watery purgatory. When they first emerge to find their boat missing, in the distance there are actually two boats in opposite directions, but they decide not to swim to either one in case they're wrong and inadvertently swim too far away. This is directly followed by a plane flying overhead, almost like the movie is taunting them with help before they even realize they're lost. At one point, they both fall asleep from exhaustion after their adrenaline wears off, and they drift apart, forcing them to use their energy reserves to reconnect. This is what I mean when I call the film an endurance test. They're trying to survive and hold out as long as possible in the hopes help will eventually arrive because, frankly, there is nothing they can practically do. The only thing that can save them is basically luck. There's even an ellipsis into nightfall where we cut back to the islanders enjoying themselves, completely indifferent and unaware of Daniel and Susan's existence as they drift in darkness as the terrifying storm rages over them. Look, to be honest, at this point, I like to think you have a fair idea of where this is all going, so let's just put the film out of its misery. I say it a lot, but there is an inescapable futility that should have settled in by this point. Eventually, Daniel is bitten by a shark and dies from shock, leading to Susan pushing his body out to a group of sharks to be eaten. By now, a search mission is underway when the diving instructor locates Susan and Daniel's belongings, but it's already too late. Susan, not wanting to suffer any longer and especially not alone, chooses to drown herself, leaving a grim thought at the back of your mind asking, if she had just held out a little longer, would she have survived? The reality is, we'll never know. Obviously, I can't show this because it's a very graphic scene, but during the credits, a shark is cut open, revealing the couple's camera in its stomach, leaving a lasting tragic memento that has you end the film with an empty, sinking feeling inside. Open Water is one of the realest, rawest survival thrillers I've ever watched. It's certainly far from being an entertaining film, but just the way it conveys this couple's final hours is utterly haunting to say the least. So until next time, let me know in the comments below what I should cover next. Stay safe, stay away from, well, you know what, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.